Thank you so much for being here, everyone. And please, as I said, it's these webinars. This one in particular is the question, and it's about the world Q&A, discussing the subjects which I really believe are important and have become more important to me late in life. And I think, you know, it's ultimately what we should all be responsible for. So this is a really important chapter to me. There was someone that actually went on Amazon actually, and they put a comment in. It was a nice comment. It wasn't a bad comment, but what they said is that, you know, they understood the message of the book and everything else, but, you know, they didn't, or she didn't, or he didn't want to sacrifice their life just by, you know, not consuming so much plastic, or, you know, taking so much care of the environment. The challenge we've got is that, you know, kind of, I believe I've shared this throughout the webinar series, and I share this throughout the book. We're ultimately responsible for becoming the best version of ourselves. That's our obligation, you know, cutting the crap and cutting the lying to yourself and the dishonesty of, you know, not taking action and being responsible for your own life, and then blaming them or they or the others, you know, for everything that happens to us. It's just not right. And I think that's the problem that we have with society nowadays, is just we tend to leave these things to other people. And we've been so destructive in just 1.5 or 2 generations. You know, what we've done from no plastic to creating this ridiculous amount of plastic for everything. And what annoys the hell out of me is that how the government is still so slow. You go to these supermarkets and you know, you have 4 tomatoes and it's got like 4 pieces of plastic and cardboard. The amount of production and water that is used in spending in creating all these things. Or you go to a bar and the waiter has to stick a straw in your glass. Why? You know, come on. It's just, these things are just not right anymore. And we just have to start taking action immediately. And the fact is that we just have to start all bearing responsibility into you know, making sure that we are doing what we can, you know. So I suppose my job or my role within this is to have these conversations. And I hope that by helping people with the book, you know, find their purpose, they ultimately start looking at focusing on what their legacy is. And the legacy has to be related to some of the subjects I'm going to be talking about today. So today, the book really builds up towards that. It's okay. So we've discussed how from the beginning of time, we've managed to, you know, do the most amazing things, how conquerors, explorers, inventors have gone out there and created the most phenomenal things on the planet. And they did that by asking themselves empowering questions. Leaders, thought-provoking people ask themselves empowering questions. They push and they say, how can I do this? How can I become better? How can I be faster? How can I break that record? You know, how can I invent this? How can I invent that? And it's by us really looking at ultimately how we can ask ourselves those empowering questions to push forward to becoming the best version of ourselves, and looking at understanding how lucky we are. You know, if we look at from the beginning and the history, we look at the Romans and the Egyptians and the Greeks, you know, there's so much intelligence that we've had from centuries to centuries to centuries, but we seem to have lost a lot of that. And we don't really realize what our great grandparents and our grandparents and our parents have had to do in order to provide us, you know, where we are here today, and the advantages we have with phones, with technology. So, you know, we're in a time where we have more methods and more ways of communicating, more ways of making an impact on the planet, and yet we're lazy. We're lazy, and we're not reacting quickly enough. You know, and unfortunately, you know, global warming can't wait. You know, pollution, you know, the plastics, it just can't wait. We can't, oh, let's wait another 10 years. It's not possible. So ultimately, and hopefully, the idea of this, you know, webinar in particular is to start talking about the things that are important. And I'm sorry, if some of you feel that it's not important, it's not your problem, well, you know, ask your kids when, you know, their grandkids or their kids might not have, you know, clear water, or they might not be able to go and see a dolphin in the ocean. It's just not right. So that's what this is. And yeah, I've got a couple of you already commenting, you know, giving some comments here that probably were saying that we live in an instant gratification society. We do, you know, it's just wrong. And so there's there's a lot to discuss here today, and we're going to go through as much as we can. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Sylvia Earle. Now, she's a remarkable person that she's dedicated her life to protecting the ocean. She's a marine biologist. She was, from a period of Jacques Cousteau. She was a very young girl getting into the bottom of the ocean. And she was named by Time magazine as the first hero for the planet in 1998. Google this woman. Sylvia Earle, Earle. And I was. I'm sorry, you might have lost the connection there for a minute. So I was saying that I had the pleasure of connecting with Dr. Sylvia Earle in an event that she was speaking at. And what a phenomenal lady. And one of the quotes that she said is that you cannot care about what you do not know about. And it's a fact. So the thing is, if we don't become more knowledgeable, if we don't read the articles that might become uncomfortable, if we don't start reading the information relating to how we're extinguishing, how we're killing millions of mammals and insects and all sorts of wildlife, or if we don't read about slavery, we don't read about these things, we're not going to care about it. So what we do, and what she said is, what we do in the next years will have an impact for the next 100,000 years. She gave a great talk, a TED talk in 2009. She says that astronauts and aquanauts alike really appreciate of air, food, water, and temperature. He had to learn everything that he could about life support system, and he had to do that in order to obviously stay alive. And he pointed out that the world around us, he said, is our life support system. That's what it is. And we need to learn everything we can about it, to do everything we can to take care of it. So referring to the fact that the world, this is our planet, and our children's and their children's, and it's a life support system. So she's a very inspiring lady. And on some of the subjects that I cover, and I know there's hundreds of them, but the things that we're going to briefly discuss here today is kind of hunger, slavery, war, gender inequality, racism, extinction of wildlife, reducing plastic waste, global warming. Now, as I said, there's many subjects. The reason I really believe it's so important that we ultimately understand what we're here for, what is my purpose in life, what am I here on this planet, is that the sooner you start understanding that, the sooner you're going to start appreciating and looking into how you can chip in, how you can be of service, how you can help. It's a big objective of what I want to do with the Best You and the Best You Legacy Club. That's my mission. My mission is to make sure that we start, really inspiring these kids and inspiring my generation to take action and to take responsibility. So hunger is appalling. It's unacceptable. And they reckon there's 795 million people, which is 1 in 9 of the world's population that haven't got enough to eat and have access to nutrients, vitamins, or any essential kind of food. 98% of the world is undernourished in the developed countries. That's 98%. In 2015, this is quite old, it says 800 million people went to bed hungry each night. In 2015, 90 million children under the age of 5, 1 in 7 worldwide, were underweight. 90% of the world's hungry children live in just 2 regions. That's Southern Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Globally, they reckon there's 160 million children that have inadequate height due to chronic hunger and malnutrition. 35 million people. 35 million people. So that's it. I mean, look at how much food we waste. How much do we all waste? I mean, I hate it. And when you buy things in a supermarket and then it's got, some people just, it's expired date and they throw it. And how much food gets thrown every single day on these fast food restaurants or in supermarkets. So that includes about 45% of all fruit and vegetables, 35% of fish and seafood, and 30% of cereals. That's 20% of the dairy product and 20% of meat. That is thrown every single day. That is the amount of 1.3 billion tons of food that is allowed to go to waste each year. 1.3 billion. Why can't we do more about it? And again, what can I do about it? How can we get involved? How can we do something locally? How can we make sure that it's distributed amongst the people that really need it? And I know there's some really great NGOs going on now that are working towards that. But if that's something that you think is terrible and you think is not acceptable, my invitation to you is to start looking into how you might be able to help and support. So the questions I ask you, how can you address this? What can I do to help? What cause can I support? How can I avoid wasting food? How can I help get food to those who need it most? What charities or legacies can I support? So those are questions. The second thing we'll talk about slavery. Now, I supported a charity called A21, and A21 it's a great charity. They're global, and they really create awareness around the fact of how much slavery is. And I talk in the book about Brené Brown and Braving the Wilderness. I did talk about her last time, and she talks about the dehumanization. And that's what it is you see people that traffic, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, people that traffic in other human beings is because they dehumanize them. They don't see them as human beings. So that's what happens in the cases of conflicts. She points out that most people find the idea of murder, torture, and human rights violations opposed, as something that is absolutely fine. It's okay to do. The Nazis called the Jews, the Unschwetzen, which means subhumans. And that's how it happens. You start calling people names, and then by you calling them names, then you start dehumanizing them. And then by you doing that, then obviously, it entitles you to do what you believe is right. That's how these extremists come. So they reckon that there's more than 10 million people that they reckon in the 16th to the 19th slavery. They were, from the 19th to the 16th to the 19th century, there was more than 10 million people were sent to the Americas as slaves. The shocking truth is that slavery now has been abolished for over 150 years. But the research shows there's approximately 40 million slaves around the planet. And it's a business that represents 150 billion annually. And the thing is, because we don't obviously see it on televisions, and we don't see it on, we don't see it advertised frequently in the news because it's not worthy of the news. Well, these things keep happening, but that's 40 million slaves. Is that roughly half the population of the UK? Roughly 78% of modern slavery involves labor slavery. It's not only manual labor in fields, it's also, including logging, ranching, fishing. Slavery can also be found in industries such as cleaners, gardeners, and maids who are forced to work under inhumane conditions for very little or no pay. It's also estimated that 22% of slaves are trapped in forced prostitution. That is something that I'm sure a lot of us are aware of. Of all of these slaves, about 26% are children. 26% of all slaves are children. It's just terrible and appalling. So a global charity that I believe you should follow and we follow is A21. So life's most persistent, Martin Luther King said that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? It's a great quote. So again, ask yourself empowering questions. Is there anything that you can do related to this? Is this something that you're close to? Is this something that you've experienced? How could you help? How can you make a difference? There's some great causes out there. In the book, I talk about war. Obviously, it's they reckon that several different ways to define war is that it's normally when more than 1,000 people, have been killed. A figure quoted by the New York Times put that the prevalence of war in perspective. According to some reckonings of the past 3,400 years, humans have entirely been at peace for 268 of them. So 268 out of 3,400 years we've been at peace. That's just 8% of recorded history, less than 1/12. In the 20th century alone, at least 108 million people were killed in wars. That's in the 20th century, 108 million people. So lots to discuss around that. Lots to discuss around gender equality, and in the modern eye, it almost seems unbelievable that, you know, so late in history, we're still discussing this, you know. But it was only in 1975 that the UK set the Sex Discrimination Act. You know, that was just relatively recently. What is it, 40 years ago, 40 odd years ago? It's well, I write in the book that it's worth stopping to consider for a moment that in Britain, before the 1970s, a woman could not get a credit card. She could not report work. She could not report at workplace, you know, sexual harassment. So in combat, or get a mortgage or a loan without a male guarantor. So it's not that long ago, and obviously, you know, things are changing. You know, with the Me Too movement, but there's still so much more to do. And I know, and I'm a massive fan of so many great women that are speaking at all our events, and, you know, the empowering women, and there's some great platforms there. And I encourage, you know, to educate your girls and your boys, you know, in making sure that they're aware of that, because it is really important. I believe that the world would be a much better place if women were in charge, and I'm sure all of you women would agree with me, and a lot of the men as well. So women's emancipation is an essential movement. It's a really important part, I think, of us taking action and really moving forward in society, because, you know, I think we would have a lot less wars, we would have less conflicts, and we would be making better decisions if we had more women in those places, where, you know, decisions need to be made. I also talk about racism, and it is a huge and complex subject. I get it, but, you know, across Europe, you know, there's a lot of racism. Racism is everywhere. You know, I remember I was a kid. I struggled with racism because I was a Spanish, you know, Latino living in London, and, you know, but it's just very, very easy. And the thing is, you see, I shared this before that, but in the past, you know, hundreds of years ago, when you know, we used to have these great men, and now we call them immigrants. So, you know, it's really making sure that we are aware of what's happening. But racism is a big subject that requires, you know, because it affects everybody. It breeds mistrust and suspicion, hatred, and the general idea of the World War II was around that. And look at where that took us. But it's just very unfortunate to see how much racism there still is. So the question is what can you do in order to help in justice? You know, are you non-judgmental? I think it's easier to say that we are than maybe necessarily being aware of when we are. You know, we always tend to make an instant judgment on someone based on the way they look, or what they dress, or where they come from, or their religion, without really looking at where they're coming from. We don't know who's or what scars everyone have. So we were talking about the extinction of wildlife and humankind, and I was sharing an article today, which you know is just terrible, which was literally talking about how it's estimated that you know, we will have 1 million species will be extinct in a very short period of time, and the reason being is because you know, we're just like polluting. I think they were saying. WWF was saying that, you know, kind of like the flora and the forest, and that is it the equivalent to 100 football stadiums every single hour that is actually getting extinct? It's not every day, every single hour. So, you know, we're just taking over everything. We're polluting everything. We're killing everything, and it has to stop. You know, we talked about Greta last week, and, you know, this girl, you know, what a pair of cojones, as we would say in Spanish, you know, kind of like how this girl comes forward, and, you know, how she's created this movement where all these students are now backing her and going on strike to encourage them, you know, to encourage the adults to take action, and how she doesn't, you know, mince her words, and she says it as it is. Good for her. And I encourage you to encourage your kids to do those kind of things, to really encourage her to take action and to support these kind of causes. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of that girl, Minnie. So the analysis was performed by a scientist, WWF, that says that, you know, if half of the animals died in the London Zoo next week, you know, it would be front page news. But it's happening in great outdoors. It's happening every single day. The damage is inevitable, but a consequence of the ways we choose to live. So there's just some really, really shocking numbers, like 99% of the currently threatened species are at risk due to human activity. The current extinction rate is estimated by experts to be between 1,000 and 10,000 times higher than the natural extinction rate. That's 1,000 to 10,000 times higher. Experts say that humans are creating the sixth great extinction. WWF estimate that we could be losing as many as 100,000 species a year. As I said, 1 million at this rate. Elephant populations have dropped 62% over the last decade. Terrible. Poachers hunting for ivory meat and body parts kill an estimated 100 African elephants a day. It's just terrible. Only 400,000 African elephants remain. 30% of African savanna elephants are wiped by poachers between 2007 and 2014. More than 6,000 rhinos were shot dead and butchered for their horns in South Africa. So look, I don't really want to I don't bring all these subjects up in order to kind of depress anyone. I just want to have the conversations and kind of what can we do about it? And I want to have these conversations, and that's kind of for me why the idea of discussing this in a place as we do, like in the legacy clubs, is around that. What can we do? Who can we support? What can we do? And it isn't only about money. Can we bring the kids in? So those are the conversations that we need to have. I end up here with plastic waste, which drives me absolutely round the bend. I mean, I have arguments with waiters when they give me a straw. I didn't ask for a straw, but I keep saying, please, excuse me, but I now, every time I'm going to have a drink, I don't need a straw. And then, if there's the guys, the managers there, the owner, I just tell them, wipe those straws out, man. Or get recyclable straws. And I know we're much more advanced now. It's been a big difference in this last 5-6 months. I think there's some laws and some legislations coming in. But, speak to your supermarket guy. Get some signatures going on. What is it we can do? How can we really take action? There were some really terrible things here about how, this is it. So talking about bottles, 40% of total plastics produced are used in packaging. An estimated 500 billion plastic bags used each year. That's over 1 million bags per minute. Each plastic bag is actually used on average of just 15 minutes. The last 10 years has seen more plastics produced than throughout the whole 20th century. 100.7 billion plastic beverage bottles were sold in the USA alone in 2014. It says the process of producing bottled water requires around 6 times as much water per bottle as there in a container. 40% of all litter comes from beverage containers, which caps and labels are considered the number, one of the highest. This is terrible. The USA alone uses 500 million plastic bags each day. Laid end to end, they would stretch around the circumference of the earth 2.5 times every day. Wow. So I also talk about global warming, and some of the great work that's out there to create awareness around global warming. Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio with the great projects that they created, the documentaries before the flood. Beautiful piece of work. And what I find fascinating is how so many, I don't know what the word is, but it starts with an A and it finishes with holes. How many of them are still ignoring the fact of global warming? It's just absolutely appalling. I agree, Ruth. That's the thing, is the discussions are fine. Is how can we take action every single day? And that's why we are all decision makers. Every single minute we're making decisions. Every single minute. So we should all make those instant decisions. But how beautiful would it be to have those conversations and have those with your family and say, hey, what can we do? And all of you start writing questions down. Start writing those questions down and then start writing those answers down of what you can or can't do. So look, the world has challenges. We can obviously deal with them. We can turn things around. We can make the planet cooler. The scientists still say we can. We still can defend, the species, but we have to start educating. And we, but we have to lead the way. I'm saying us, in the West and the civilized countries. So I talk at the end about, some of the old, and I think that I love about personal development is, one of the things I love about personal development is to see how so many great people have gone out there and done some fantastic things. So I'm just going to read a couple of comments here. So Ruth says that discussing it, but each person take action every day. Carol says it's worse than ignoring global warming. Some deny the facts to make money themselves, not caring about long-term value. Absolutely, it is so obvious. It is so obvious, but they need to be pointed out. And Janet is saying that sadly we think we're going to recycling centres and the plastic not being recycled often dumped into other countries or landfills. Yeah, inspire others. What makes people think? So I think what we need more people that are prepared to take action, to stand up, to take responsibility. We need more Gretas, and that's what people like Martin Luther King stood for, Franklin Roosevelt, Muhammad Ali, who was considered, or is, or was, unfortunately considered a legend when, he passed away. But, he went through a lot. He was pushing the boundaries of what was and wasn't possible and what was considered, acceptable or not. Viktor Frankl, Jesse Owens, Malala, Marina Silva, there's Helen Keller, Jessica Cox. There's just so many different people that are taking action. And then the beauty of what's happening as well is that a lot of people are starting to understand as well about how we need to rechange or reframe this wealth redistribution. There's just there's a lot of people, there's very few people that have all the money. So wealth distribution is starting to happen. And it's just great to see people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and some great others, really investing in taking care of the planet. So it's down to all of us. It's down to all of you to start taking action. I've said that many times. I've said that before. There is no they, we're they. So I just simply wanted to kind of point out some of the things that we all know. I find that, when I've had some of these conversations in the meetings, when I've run the legacy clubs and we talked about the best you, a lot of people, might have found these conversations a little bit uncomfortable, and they would have probably preferred that I maybe talk about how you can become the best version of yourself by trying to motivate people. I am trying to motivate people. I'm just simply trying to present to all of us the realities of life. So hopefully, potentially something like that annoys us so much that we say, you know what, that's it, it's enough, I can't do this. And hopefully it triggers opportunities for us to be able to go out there and find our purpose. So that's the reason I'm pointing out. I think if personal development is about just you becoming the best version of yourself, well, that is what I call selfish development. Then you're in the business of selfish development. I believe being selfish is a good thing. I think we have to take care of ourselves. I think we have to focus on ourselves. I think sometimes we have to understand that we are a priority. Put the mask on yourself first before you put it on someone else. In order to help others, you need to become the best version of yourself. But once you've done that, then start really looking into what is it you're here for? What can you do? What can you do? So we're pretty much close to the end. I mean, I've gone through this quite quickly, but because there's a lot of material that I could read related to the book, but it was more about presenting the cases that we have, finding people that inspire you. Do research on people that inspire you. Look at the subjects that you really affect you. Is it PTSD? Is it mental health? Is it children being enslaved? Is it slavery? Is it plastic? Is it global warming? What is it? It is. Find out what it is, and then look and find and identify those that are already leading the way. And if you can't create something yourself, which is fine, then support them. Find out how you can support them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about money. It's about finding ways that you can contribute. Maybe you can get some signatures going for some whatever course. So I've got a couple of other questions here. So Pradeep saying environmental care education starts from school. We were certainly taught impact pollution and congestion in the 70s. Yeah, probably, but I don't think we were prepared to understand the consequences of what, how plastic and how we were going to I don't think in the history books it was being presented how much we were going to pollute and destroy this planet. Mimi's saying that while we have to respect our planet and think of the future generation who will inherit this earth, and we have a moral duty to do so. Absolutely, absolutely. And I really encourage you. I mean, my kids are grown up now, but I really hope that, you know, kind of either with what I do or what you do, is you have these conversations with your kid. Nadia is saying that we can help by breaking the bags before recycling. Okay. I know it's a norm now in the supermarkets, and, you know, people have to take their own plastic bags and things like that. But I mean, you know, kind of go and buy in a market. Don't buy in a supermarket. Just don't buy from a supermarket that puts 14 layers of plastic around 4 tomatoes. You know, and if not, just tell the manager of the shop and just saying it's unbearable and unacceptable. I don't know if there's petitions that are already out there, that let's get them signed. It just has to. We just have to be a little bit more. I mean, you know, they were talking about, you know, some of these environmentalists taking action in order to kind of like, you know, but what else are we going to do? You know, what else are we going to do? We have to be proactive. Mimi saying that she found a very inspiring woman who left prison and then went on to create criminal justice, non-profit, in 8 years, has won awards and helped so many young people and ex-offenders turn their life around. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Mimi. That's great. And we want more people like that. Belinda is saying thank you for the webinar series and raising awareness of world problems in this episode. My pleasure. Thank you. It's funny, we've actually had less people attending this webinar than we've had the others. And I'm not sure the reason why. Maybe today's a specific Tuesday that people couldn't join us. But I just think that, you know, kind of like, my experience is that people don't want to have the uncomfortable conversations. And life isn't Disney, you know. Life is a reality. And I think that it's about having those thought-provoking conversations and those thought-provoking questions. It's the only way we're going to start moving forward. Okay, we have to. Ruth says, I see hope in the way children are being encouraged to think about the planet. That takes time for them to make an impact. Absolutely, and it is. And I think we bumped it up so much for them that they are definitely now starting to take action. And as I said, you know, girls like Greta and more of them, but we're still in charge, and we're still going to be in charge for quite a few years until they come forward. So anything we can do to do that. In general, this is kind of what I wanted to cover today. And she is now trying to have plastic to energy machines around the country. Okay, perfect. She's sharing the link there. Thank you so much. I'm sure you can all see the links. Please, I'll share it here anyway, just in case. Oh, sorry, I just shared something from Carol there as well. But that's the link that Mimi shared. Thank you for sharing that. No worry, nothing to apologize, Carol. Pradeep saying, I feel there's a greater sense of awareness. The week long environmental protests in London slows show this. Absolutely, absolutely. Funny enough, you know, the politicians are now starting to talk about bringing this to the top of the agenda. My pleasure. Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for sharing that. So look, I want to thank you so much for all of you for being here. I've done these webinars with the best intentions, just to simply help you in finding potentially what your purpose is in life and what you hear. What I've shared in the book is related to what I believe to be true, in the fact of it's about the quality of your thoughts. It's about having the right mindset. It's about thinking, the quality of your thinking, and about thinking big. That's what it is. In order to do that, you can really push start, you can kickstart, you can really get moving in the right direction if you ask yourself empowering questions to any and every subject that is close to you, that you're interested in finding focus, or that you really want to move forward in life, or simply related to, I don't know, how can you find a better job? How can I become stronger? How can I lose weight? How can I become an entrepreneur? Whatever the subject is, just write whatever the subject is, and then start asking yourself empowering questions related to that subject in particular. And you'll be surprised what happens when you start asking yourself those empowering questions. Do that on a daily basis. Do that when you're struggling with something specific. Ask yourself something related to that challenge that you're going through. Ask yourself as many questions as you can. And I've shared that in the book. I've ultimately tried to help you with this. I believe that if you do that, you will find your purpose. And then I think if you find your purpose, then you're going to find ways of leaving a legacy. I've talked about all the different kinds of ways that I can help you, support you with the book in the different formats, through the e-course, through the webinars. I am obviously shared a couple of times about the Legacy Club, but that's something I've created, which came from me finishing the book. Then I started launching these Legacy Clubs around the world. We've got around 12 or 13 now in different places, and we have so many more showing up and popping up around the planet. And that's what we do. We sit down every month and we discuss legacy. We discuss purpose. We help each and every individual find their own personal purpose, but then we try and support everyone in the group so we can find a collective objective of as a legacy. And then the idea with all the different legacy clubs around the world is for us to create awareness around some of these subjects, which, as I said, are not acceptable. I want to create a platform of like-minded individuals that believe that we're here for a reason and that we have to make a difference. So that's what kind of I've been sharing in these last webinars. Non-profit that Mimi is sharing is called @wellbeingcare.co, and multi-pack. Can't be others followed by example. Hopefully, it's a start. Pradeep, thank you. My pleasure. I've learned a lot. So you said, thank you so much. And Mimi, Twitter handle, if anyone is on Twitter. Okay, that's your Twitter handle. That's Mimi's. Okay, perfect. Well, I want to thank you all for being here. You can read more about my journey, the book, at www.thequestion.co. And if you want to find out more about me, bernardo-moya.com, you can find my Instagram accounts in there. And obviously my brand, and I'm sure quite a lot of you are aware of it, it's thebestyou.co. And in thebestyou.co, you can see all the different things we do with the Best You magazine, the Best You Expo. We've got some exciting things happening. Belinda's saying that she would like to join a think tank for environmental global warming issues. Great, fantastic. I just want to start these conversations. And I want to thank you all. And I've got to say that every time I've run one of the webinars, what's been lovely about it is that everyone that started has joined us and stayed to the end. So that's a good sign. I'll take that as a good sign. So I'm going to stop recording now. I want to thank you so much. I'll stay online for a few more minutes if any of you wanted to ask me anything. But thank you so much anyway. I appreciate it. Lots of love.